Hi everyone, welcome back to Rabbi's Reflection. I'm glad that you're joining with me today. We'll be continuing in our study of Kitchen Table Wisdom by Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen, and today reading the story on naming and awe. Stay with us as we read through the story and then offer some reflections. A label is a mask life wears. We put labels on life all the time. Right, wrong, success, failure, lucky, unlucky, may be as limiting a way of seeing things as diabetic, epileptic, manic depressive, or even invalid. Labeling sets up an expectation of life that is often so compelling we can no longer see things as they really are. This expectation often gives us a false sense of familiarity toward something that is really new and unprecedented. We are in relationship with our expectations and not with life itself. Which brings up the idea that we may become as wounded by the way in which we see an illness as by the illness itself. Belief traps or frees us. Labels may become self-fulfilling prophecies. Studies of voodoo death suggest that in certain circumstances, belief may even kill. We may need to take our labels and even our experts far more lightly. Some years ago, I served on the dissertation committee of a woman in the Midwest who was studying spontaneous remission of cancer. Among the people who answered her ad in the paper asking for people who thought they may have had an unusual experience of healing was a farmer who had done exceptionally well despite a dire prognosis. On the phone one evening, she told me about him. She felt his outcome was related to his attitude. He didn't take it on, she said. Confused, I asked her if he had denied that he had cancer. No, she said, he had not. He had just taken the same attitude toward his physician's prognosis that he took toward the words of the government soil experts who analyzed his fields. As they were educated men, he respected them and listened carefully as they showed him the findings of their tests and told him that the corn would not grow in this field. He valued their opinions. But, as he told my student, a lot of the time, the corn grows anyway. In my experience, a diagnosis is an opinion and not a prediction. What would it be like if more people allowed for the presence of the unknown and accepted the words of their medical experts in this same way? The diagnosis is cancer. What that will mean remains to be seen. Like a diagnosis, a label is an attempt to assert control and manage uncertainty. It may allow us the security and comfort of a mental closure and encourage us not to think about things again. But life never comes to a closure. Life is process, even mystery. Life is known only by those who have found a way to be comfortable with change and the unknown. Given the nature of life, there may be no security, but only adventure. This week's story from Dr. Remen truly challenges us and the ways that probably all of us live life. Because in some ways that's how we need to live life. We need to live life with a sense of certainty, as she would call it in the story, labeling or maybe even masks, because we couldn't function without the labels. She brings up some great examples in the beginning, whether it was feelings or expectations or then diagnoses. I think that's a really helpful way for us to challenge what it means to put on these labels. Labels are helpful because they set up expectations for us, and oftentimes they're true, and that can be compelling. But what Dr. Remen is challenging us today is to recognize or notice that sometimes the labels are masks and they don't allow us to really see truly what might be going on. She brings in a very poignant example about how for some individuals there's been a spontaneous remission of cancer. Obviously, this isn't the norm, but for a small group of individuals, that has happened. And what was it that led to that? Again, I think it's important to note, and Dr. Remen, I imagine, of course, would agree with this as well, is that it's not that one's attitude completely changes then how the diagnosis that they might choose, or they might be given, and the what might end up happening in their life. But sometimes our attitude can help us change perspectives, and perhaps in some ways change the outcome. I love that quote from the farmer who says, "A lot of the time, the corn grows anyways." You see, the experts were coming to tell the farmer where he could plant and where he couldn't, but he knew his field. He knew where the corn would grow, and he knew that even after their well-meaning and well-intentioned labels, their well-intentioned diagnosis of that he couldn't necessarily grow corn in this area of his land, he did it anyways because a lot of the time the corn grows anyways. So I think what Dr. Remen is inviting us to think about is to see diagnosis as an opinion, not a prediction. Of course, to trust in those who are, more learned and well-versed in science and medicine in that field, or in other fields as well, but to not be so sure of the labels that we give ourselves. And I think in some ways that can be really freeing. Perhaps there's been a certain narrative or a way that you think about life, and that has become the label for you. That has become the compelling way of viewing life. And maybe this could be a moment where you think, hey, it doesn't have to be that way. Perhaps I can change my attitude or my perspective. So I'm hoping and wishing for you some time of introspection to think about our perspectives and our attitudes. And hopefully that can be something of meaning for us in the days and the week ahead. All right, be well, everyone.